Well, this is about my third trip to Europe since COVID became a problem. Each country was appropriately different. Germany had something they called a Luca, spelled with a C, and mine wouldn't load saying my Android was too old. And in each club restaurant you would manually sign in, notice using their PIN, which I didn't, and you would show them your immunization card. In Italy, they had something called euphemistically a green pass, and it was a European PLF code. That's for Italy, Malta, Slovenia, Austria, and France. And turns out the Italians were the only ones that used it, and they were adamant you had to have the printout code. France was a little bit less so. Belgium was typically Belgian in the sense that, they wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they obeyed the rules. So here we go. Got my global Eurail pass, the Interrail's for Europeans, the Eurail's for non-Europeans. And of course I look for a special deal, maybe 10-20% off, getting even the senior pass. What's new is you no longer do it through Rail Europe. You do it through Eurail, directing to the most relevant site for you, and you can even buy them directly at the train stations in Germany. New feature is you can pre-validate it, which can save some time and effort. And of course, one of the problems there is if you have a canceled plane trip that might screw up the dates. Of course, if you have a little bit of slack in there, it's okay. And a reminder, you do have to put leading zeros on the notations. And more interestingly, you no longer have to send it in. Well, as usual, I made my own custom timetable. Not that hard to do at all. You go to, say, the Bahn.de site. You find the route you're interested in. You tap on the further information, and you'll see the train number. You tap on the train number and you cut and paste the relevant portion of the route. In case we have the first one, that's an ICE German train from Cologne to Brussels. That's preferred because it avoids all those charges and reservation necessities associated with the expensive Thalys. Likewise, that applies to German trains if you're only on a German pass. That includes Amsterdam and trains to Italy. Here in Cologne, if you will, we're noting that the Thalys store, train we're going to avoid because of its super high fares, used to have a shop over there. You could have booked TGV, but no longer. And we're instead going to be taking the ICE German International, reservation-free to Brussels. You can likewise avoid the expensive Thalys from Brussels to Amsterdam, taking the inner city, and going to Paris, go via Lille, and then just take the far cheaper TGV from Lille to Paris. Little chance to also visit their great Galleria between the two, high-speed and Flanders station. We're here in Belgium's modernistic train station in Liège, what the Germans call Lutisch and the Dutch Flemish call Leuk. The town of Aachen in Germany, the French call Aix-la-Chapelle. Most people know that Paris, the Italians call Parigi, and Germans call Venice, Venezia, Venedig. Probably the strangest of them all is Vienna, Wien, which the Slavics call Besch. As we come into Brussels on the reservation-free ICE German train, we'll gain an advantage over the expensive Thalys by gaining a stop in Brussels North, making convenient connections to Center, which is not the main train station. That's Sud in Flemish Dutch or Midi in French. We're passing Zaventem, which is the stop for the Brussels National Airport, has a mandatory supplement whether you do or do not have a pass. That's in contrast to, say, Madrid's Barajas, where their commuter train, as opposed to the metro, is likewise, and maybe in the extreme cases such as Rome's Michelangelo and Stockholm's Alvesta, where have private connections. Further, in contrast to, say, the Orly at Paris,
where that's a private metro, unlike all the others, or you can maybe make a connection at Ponterongas, getting the RERC connection into town. Now that England's been added to the Global Pass, I'm sure that the Gatwick Express is still excluded. We're in Brussels Centrale, which, by the way, if you want to make a reservation, this is the better option. They'll admit that the one at the main station, Midi Sud, frankly, are man-haters. But you know what? We're going to go to the Grand Place. Here's the station. Let's take the shortcut. The obligatory stop here in Brussels is the Mannequin Piss, which, according to the story during the Napoleonic Wars, put out a fire doing, well, the obvious. In Brussels, I never miss a chance across from the Bourse, the stock exchange, to have an hamburger Albanese. As we leave Belgium, as always, they have a calm sensibility about crises, including COVID. Mask wearing is appropriate. The checking for your immunization is appropriate. Unlike, say, the sometimes scolding hysterical Germans and Spaniards, and yet, on the other hand, unlike the Czechs, with their lackadaisical approach, probably accounts for the highest COVID rate in Europe. Only two timetables for departures are in yellow. Be reminded, in Belgium, there are two sets. Weekends and holidays like these, and elsewhere, weekdays. I'm on the German train, and I'm trying the Kalbsraumgulasch. In Rhine-Westphalen, there's always a long pause, maybe to smoke, as the trains either couple or uncouple for 1 or 2 seconds. I received by email 4 days in advance my boarding pass for the TGV French train Ouigo. That's separate from the regular TGVs. It's a, if you will, internet-only train. Made the reservation because I couldn't reserve it on U-Rail. Berlin, an obligatory visit is the Gedächtniskirche, a memorial to a purposely unrebuilt church from the war, also a center of Christmas shopping, and frankly also a horrible crash a few years back. Major trains in Berlin to the Hauptbahnhof here, almost all will stop at Spandau. And the train conductor, she made a point of being proactively not helpful by saying, oh, just take the S-Bahn, which I know for a fact is 20 minutes longer. Well, changing at Spandau, especially going into Berlin, look for Cottbus or the airport if you want to go to, say, Zoologischer Garden, or what the locals call Zoo, for the zoo. Well, here in Hamburg, the train to Copenhagen, used to be over there, used to be a boat train to Puttgarden, Roodboe. No more. They now go up the Jutland, given major road improvements along the islands to Copenhagen. The last boat train in Europe, the main one, is between the boot of Italy and Messina on Sicily. An old-timey great one. Don't miss it. Coming to Stuttgart, noting it's a butt-in terminal station, therefore looking on the left-hand side, being vigilant for some old-timey equipment ranging from the Adler to the Rheingold, maybe even the Cisalpino, one of the original Niga technique pendular trains that used to run from Stuttgart to Milan, but alas, no more. Now takes some 3-4 connections, and that old-timey route, instead via Munich on the Eurocity, still is competitive through the Brenner Pass. As we prepare to leave Germany, having visited 4 major cities and 4 major states, or Länder, if you will, they've standardized the rules for verifying your immunization, or what the Germans call Impfung, and they have something called a Luca. It's a device for your cell phone, what they call a handy. I couldn't get it quite to work because I don't believe they're not happy with foreign zip codes or foreign telephone numbers, knowing that you do need a plus sign for those. So I brought paper documents because you can sign in manually. Turns out the 4 bars in the 4 cities that I usually start the evening with
which I'm not fond of, and I think likewise they're not fond of me, didn't like the copies. On the other hand, the 4 bars that I do like, and vice versa, had no problem with it.
Well, disappointingly, the full restaurant service was not available in either of these Austrian trains, the Railjet Express, nor this Eurocity going to Italy. Just a bunch of cold snacks. So I brought my own. Notice the German Erdnuss flips. They're peanut Cheetos. The great plans of mice and men. Well, you know the story. On my last one, I was kicked off the train in France. I thought I'd follow directions. Here on the train going from Austria to Italy, another likewise story. Turns out, not only do you fill out that form, similar to the one entering the United States, but you have to fill out a PDF form registering going into Italy and or France. Luckily, I had a very bright, friendly stranger help me out, but boy, you got to be prepared, and I thought I'd done my homework. Well, it turns out it's an EUPLF form for Italy, and in case of France, it turns out to be a paper document, Slovenia, Czechia, so on, and the code that for example, the hotel wanted was the one on the email, not the one on the document itself. Go figure. Well, as usual, coming down from Munich to Bologna, I took the Eurocity, and there is a supplement of 10 euros, an Auspreis, that is above and beyond a seat reservation with your rail pass. I think I'm going to avoid it going back, because, well, if you take the train all the way to Bolzano, and then the local regional train, then you go and catch it at the border, which is Berenero. Well, that's where the obligation for the Italian supplements, as is the case for all Italian trains, end. As we come into Milano Centrale, a dead-end station, so we'll be turning around, we're going to continue on to Turin, Torino. That's where we'll be catching the French TGV to Paris, what they call Parigi. It does depart from Milan. Trouble is, it's another station. Therefore, we'll be connecting in Torino, Porto Susa, noting there is also Porta Nova. And here's a map of the various aero trains, red, silver, and white, in Italy, respectively known as Freccia Rossa, Argenta, e Bianca. Here in France, Chambéry, we're changing trains from the TGV we took from Turin, Milan, and we're going to Lyon, what the Italians call Leone. There used to be a turbo train directly between the two, reminding us there used to be one between Stuttgart and Milan. Strange how sometimes they de-evolve train. The EUPLF.EU form is for Malta, Slovenia, Italy, and France. For Italy, it's long, involved, and requires a QR code on the one they send you for the receipt, not the form itself, and is mandatory throughout Italy, including every train, every hotel, every bar. Here's the French version. It's just a attestation saying that you're going to be a good boy or a girl, and for him or her, or is it now herm, will be a good one. And by the way, the French have now adopted a ambiguous word, which is kind of like between il and lui, and that's really saying something, because the French have the one word that doesn't exist in English and vice versa, and that's his or hers, with set and se being actually matching the noun and not the speaker. In France, there's really two main train stations, the mainline station, Pardieu, and the Centrale station, Barrage. There are sometimes trains connecting between the two, but I think I'll be taking the metro because the timing can be closer, and the line number, it's important, is line number 1. Well, here at the automatic machine, I did print it out at the hotel. Good thing I didn't. It didn't like the reference number, even though I checked it twice. Not a surprise, this is a different kind of system, even though it says WeGo. In his case, WeGo not. With this kind of advanced pass control, you better arrive early. And here's the brand spanking new Italian service between Milan and Milano Centrale e Parigi Paris Gare de Lyon, and it's dedicated for French service, but it's Italian. Well, you got to look on the locator board, which is now on the screen, and it'll tell you where to stand on the quay, the platform, to find your proper coach. Notice, like any double-set train with various Abteilungen, you cannot go from one to the other. With a profoundly different livery, boy, is that blue. The WeGo trains are separately operated from the SNCF Rail pass being generally valid on suburban trains. In Northern Europe, that'd be an S-Toget for Denmark, Germanic countries, and S-Bahn. The Cercanías in Spain. Somewhat limited and very different in terms of naming for Portugal, such is not the case in Paris. It turns out they don't even want you to eat on the train in France, so I'll have to go to the bathroom where we used to smoke it in the bathroom. Konstablerwache in Frankfurt on Main, and I must have done this dozens and dozens of times. 3 stops from the Hauptbahnhof. For the first time ever, they were checking for your ticket. Good thing I brought my rail pass. It was valid. Here in Munich, the ever helpful Eurail guy is still here. The Salzburg Station, upon entering Austria, they require a 3 vaccination for entry. Here in Salzburg, they're joining this section of the Railjet Express, not to be confused with the Railjet, which is not an express, and we'll be joining it with this section. Can't go from one to the other, as you recall. They're going to be split apart again in Vienna. Speisewagen, the restaurant car, is open on the Austrian trains, and one of my favorites is the Wiener Schnitzel. How appropriate, because I am going to Wien. And I like to add with it the Austrian peach schnapps called Marillen. Goes great with coffee. Those are about to leave Austria, which has a mandatory 3 booster-included vaccination requirement. They're really also strong about having this FFP2 mask on the left. I've been wearing the one on the right. The difficulty, at least for me, is it rips your ears off, and I have an allergy to the nylon. So you know what I do? I wear the one on the left over the one on the right. They seem to think that's okay. This is an Austrian Railjet. I'll be taking on the east side of Austria for the first time. And indeed, it is impressive both inside and out. But it did only replace their Eurocity service with the same timings. They're not high-speed trains, but still nice. Getting ready for the trip back home, and here's the entry form called an attestation for entering France. Very perfunctory, answer some questions, 1 page. Here's the one that's 8 pages going to the United States, including, of course, the obligatory how long the form needs to be filled out, public notifications, clearly the work of at least 5 committees. Well, I think you get what I'm getting at. Because I made this reservation for only €3 on the Austrian side for the travel in Italy, I got email notifications that they're going to substitute the train with a bus, which will make a lot of delays, meaning I better change at Mestre instead of Santa Lucia for a better connection. And I did have the pass for the reservation for the secondary train, which I thought I'd kept just in case, which is the case. Because of the time delay with the bus, and we're having a stop here at Udine, which I checked is a high-speed stop, It's probably going to be more effective if they catch it here before going to Venezia. Well, sure enough, here in Udine, we're going to make a better connection. It does require that you exchange your ticket. You're allowed to do it one time for free on the rail pass. And good thing I checked with the window, because the earlier train is so much slower. They printed out a little timetable for me. This is the main line station in Venice, Venezia, Venedig, Mestre, which would be convenient if you had to make a tight connection. I thought we were going to make a tight connection, but because of the bus, hey, let's go in and see Santa Lucia, go across the causeway. Generally, they finally adopted the convention of using the native city name. Here's an exception. This is Geneva, or as the Germans call it, Genf. They've adopted the native spellings in most other cases. Well, as we leave Italy, they're adamant that you must wear this type of mask called an FFP2. And you have to fill out something they call a green pass, which I found half the time works and doesn't. It's very long. And the possibility is, well, you just show them the original. It must be 3 shots, including the booster, and they'll accept an original copy. As I've done on more than one occasion, I made a reservation using a stop that was further so that I could actually choose if that was necessary, and it turns out this was the case from Florence, Firenze, instead of Bologna. I've done that elsewhere, especially on international trains that don't exist anymore, where you have to make a change inside the country. In this case, it was fortuitous in that they had a train strike, a sciopero, coming up here in Italy. And, well, in that case, I said, let's be a little bit more sure. Let's leave 2 hours earlier. And so that meant I would, instead of my plan of going all the way to Bolzano on the high-speed train, instead I'll be taking the Eurocity directly, in this case the 2 hours earlier, from Bologna. Well, it turns out I needed to make the reservation to get from Firenze, Florence to Bologna, and the ticket office wasn't open, and you can't do that anymore on the automatic machines, so I talked my way onto the train. Yes, I did. Here on this Austrian train, unlike the Italian trains, you can get a caffè corretto. That's with alcohol, spirituosa, and schnapps, if you will. In this case, Milan, it's Austrian. And by billing with your Capital One card, you get your 4% back. Not in the case of Bank of America or Chase, where they charge a foreign exchange fee. So now they do border control, in this case going into Germany, and don't be surprised if they're undercover. As we say goodbye to Munich and Bavaria, they still have a 10 o'clock closing time for their bars called Kneipe. Swiss train, I'm trying their Thai curry chicken poulet, if you will, with rice. And they've reminded if you can, bill it in the native currency. Especially if you don't have a card that charges foreign exchange fees. We dealt with that. Here's a little update. Sweden has dropped the use of all cash, bargeld, in effectivo, manta, which of course is nice until the whole power system went down, the economy froze. This last leg, I'm going from Munich to Zurich, but stopping off at the airport first, with an open leg, meaning 2 different cities arriving and leaving. Not only making it convenient, but also far cheaper. Yes, I use cheap tickets, no liability to be assumed nor implied, but they are very good. Here in Switzerland, they made an announcement that you needed to register. I did check the rules in advance, having been only in Austria and Germany, and being 3 times immunized, geimpft, and have had a test the day before negative. That said it was optional, but I thought I'd try and register anyhow. Turns out the internet connection needs an internet connection to get the internet connection, because I don't have a cell phone. That's enough. All the other countries, except Italy, never bothered with it. Italy, they checked every time. Coming back into LA, we're going to connecting to the parking lot C City Bus Center, taking the number 3 blue bus, the Santa Monica bus, best kept secret on the west side. You know, I think it saved me $2,000 in the last 30 years. Here's the stop for the big blue bus, number 3 line. It also includes sometimes the Rapid, going to downtown Santa Monica, not to be confused with the one that continues on to the Green Line Aviation Station over there. If you're using the tap card, it's even cheaper now for the usage.